lots to cover, but first, some news. The U.S. Congress is putting the finishing touches on a $2 trillion economic stimulus package in response to the coronavirus. The 1,000-page bill contains aid for regular Americans as well as small and large businesses, including airlines and manufacturing. The package passed through the Senate in a bipartisan vote of 96-0. It is set for a vote in the House on March 27th. The bill is not without several controversial and questionable provisions, which I will get to with my first guest tonight. Joining me now to unpack Congress's $2 trillion stimulus package and the forecast for the U.S. economy as we make our way through this pandemic is the director of the National Economic Council under President Trump. Please welcome back to the program, Larry Kudlow, who joins us from the White House. Larry, thanks for being with us. I want to begin with a debate over when to reopen this economy. The president has said he'd like to see us out of this quarantine, or many of us, by Easter. Watch.
I would say by Easter we'll have a recommendation, and maybe before Easter. But our country wants to get back to work.
Larry, is Easter a realistic goal? What's the right balance here?
Well, look, first of all, it's my view, it's a matter of leadership. And it's an aspirational target, meaning it could be flexible. We're working towards it. We're going through a lot of data analysis. We're gathering data banks and doing our empirical work. And we want to see which areas, it's the term is stratification, Raymond. You want to look at demographic groups, okay, who's at risk and who's not. You want to look at what the testing scores show. That's very important. You want to look for hot spots versus non-hot spots. That's very important. You want to look at, crowds versus non-crowds, social distancing to what degree. So the term for that is stratification. We're looking at everything. I think the president is actually right. He's signaling the country we want to reopen wherever we can reopen because, look, the health and safety of the American people comes first. But remember, economic health and economic security goes hand in hand with health security. So to the extent that we can begin to rebalance and merge the two, we will. I think of it as a flexible target and an aspirational target, but I will tell you this, we are working toward that. We are working toward something
now, Larry,
like that.
You're on that coronavirus task force. Yes. I know some of the consultants there would like to shut down the economy for 6 months because they're only looking at the stress this could put on hospitals. Is that reasonable and acceptable to you?
Well, look, I'm not going to second guess. We have the most brilliant health specialists and scientists in the country. They're either working full-time or they're working part-time or on the phone. I am not going to second guess them. What I am going to say is that we have to be concerned with whatever balance can be reached. Now, we are not going to sacrifice health and safety. We are not. But many people, for example, Raymond, there are whole states out there that have virtually no infection cases. So that might qualify as one of those, remember, stratification, that might show one of the stratas or one of the demographics or one of the geographics that work. We're looking, some places have a shortage of hospital space, some places have a surplus of hospital space. We would look at that as well. But I'm not going to second guess the opinion of our health specialists because they've done a fabulous job and we are doing what we have to do to try and deal with this. And again, Raymond, prayerfully, and I mean this prayerfully, this is going to be a question of weeks, at most months, but it is not a question of years. That's what makes this difficult situation a little less difficult, and people need to have some faith here.
Okay. There's a letter the president released to the governors of the nation, and in it he says the coronavirus task force and the administration is going to be identifying low risk, middle risk, and high risk counties around the country so that the local governors can decide. It looks like what he's proposing is a rolling reopening of this economy, as you said, based on danger, threat, and infection rate in a given locality. Is that the vision that I'm hearing here?
Yes, more or less, that's exactly right. That's this stratification business. Yeah, I mean, different places have different stories, some better, some worse, and so forth and so on, but that's exactly right. And I want to say, in addition when you make an economic decision like this, in addition to consulting the health specialists, which is essential, we're not going to buck their advice. It's important to go to the state executives, the governors, who have been terrific. I mean, you've got my friend Andrew Cuomo in California, Gavin Newsom, in New York, Gavin Newsom in California. We're all working together in this. We're all in a unity mode here. But we will, obviously, when you go county by county, you're talking about state jurisdictions, so that'll be a key part of it.
Okay, Congress and the White House have come to an agreement on this $2 trillion stimulus package. $2 trillion, Larry, that's a big number. Now, you've called it the single largest Main Street assistance program in the history of the U.S. But this package dwarfs the $800 billion stimulus package passed in 2008 during the financial crisis. Does the price tag and the associated debt concern you, Larry?
No, it does not. Look,
it doesn't?
It does not. It doesn't because we've never had a situation like this before. We've never had a virus, an epidemic that had taken such a large economic toll. Remember, 2008 was completely different than what we're living through in 2020. 2008 was essentially a systemic collapse of the banking system. There are lots of reasons for that. We don't have time to go into it. This has nothing to do with the collapse of the banking system. By the way, it doesn't have anything to do with the collapse of the economy. The economy was roaring coming into this year, roaring in January and February. It has to do with this virus. And we have to learn what it is, how to defeat it. You know, we're looking at measures, medicines, and so forth to deal with it. So these numbers have to be proportionate to the threat and the impact on the economy. We've never had anything like this. But Raymond, I don't like deficit spending any more than the next person, but the reality is interest rates are so low, 30, 40 basis points, for heaven's sakes. If you have to borrow in order to invest into workers and families who are getting the bulk of our assistance and small businesses who are getting the other bulk of the assistance, that's a good investment. And again, this is a matter of weeks and months, not years. So I think that's a very good trade-off.
Let's dive into this stimulus package. It is meant to deliver financial support to businesses forced to shut their doors, relief to American families and hospitals that have to respond rapidly to this coronavirus. The main points of the bill are the following. $250 billion set aside for direct payments to individuals and families, $350 billion to small businesses in loans, $250 billion to unemployment insurance benefits, $500 billion in loans for distressed companies, and $150 billion plus for the healthcare system. Individuals who earn $75,000 or less, Larry, would get direct payments of $1,200 each, while married couples earning $150,000 get about $2,400 and an additional $500 per child. When can those Americans expect to see their checks?
We're working hard at it. I think the individual checks, Raymond, which will be distributed by the IRS, probably in a week or two. Let's call it just a few short weeks. The unemployment, and by the way, and here's an important point, some people have missed it. Those checks go out to kind of help families get through the basic essentials, particularly if you're shut in, right? You may still have a job, but you're shut in, you're not working. So that's a bridge. Those checks are a bridge to the more difficult story, which is unemployment benefits, which might take a few weeks longer. So there's a bridge there. But you're quite right. It's $500 billion to individuals and families, about $350 billion to small business. Don't forget, you know, you can't have a good job unless you have a good business, a healthy business to hire you. So we have gone through a business payroll tax. We've gone through loan guarantees to small businesses up to, I think, 500 or so employees. We're going to take down their expenses. We're going to make up for lost revenues. These are the small business. And incidentally, one other thing, you mentioned the $500 billion. Now, that's the Treasury's Exchange Stabilization Fund. Just think of it as an emergency fund. That's what gives the Federal Reserve tremendous firepower, yes, to help distressed industries, But also, the Fed is helping everybody here. I mean, it's going to be about $4 trillion probably when it's said and done. The Fed is helping the financial markets to keep stability because there's a bit of a credit crunch that's developed. Liquidity, thank you. You're exactly on target. They're going to be helping credit card loans, student loans, small business loans, municipal bond offerings by states and localities that need some help. So the Fed assistance in the form of loans, backed up by the Treasury guarantees, will cover virtually the entire economy. And again, the goal here is to try to stabilize the economy and the financial markets as best we can while we work through what I hope, and again I say this prayerfully, are the last weeks of the worst of the virus. That's our goal. Okay. And then we should come back very, very strong in the back end of the year.
Now, Larry, according to reports, one of the sticking points for Democrats in passing this stimulus package was a fight over abortion providers like Planned Parenthood. Democrats wanted abortion providers to be eligible for aid under the small business portion of this bill. Language has since been inserted barring nonprofits that receive Medicaid funding, which included Planned Parenthood. What do you make of the last-minute attempts here to try to load this bill with pork? $25 million for the Kennedy Center, $75 million for the National Endowment for the Humanities. I mean, this has nothing to do with the coronavirus, Larry.
Well, that's true. Look, Raymond, I'm going to stay away. You know that I'm a strong pro-life person, defending the life of the unborn, have been for decades and decades and decades. So that's my personal view, remains my personal view. I'm going to stay away from the politics of this thing. I just want to see the House vote as quickly as possible so we can get everything charged up and get the disbursement procedures going, get through the mechanics, get through the computer stuff so folks can begin to get some assistance to keep them going during these next few weeks and months. That's the key point. The politics are the politics. We got the bill. It was a heck of a thing. It's $2.2 trillion of spending assistance. It's another $4 trillion of Fed assistance. That's over $6 trillion, Raymond. That's almost 1/3 of the entire U.S. economy. Those are the resources we are devoting to try to keep the economic side alive until we can finally conquer the virus.
Larry Kudlow, we will leave it there. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks very much, Raymond. Appreciate it.